So the largest watch fair in the world, Watches and Wonders, is over, and it's time to discuss the novelties from some of the brands that I find a bit extra interesting. Today it's time to digest basically the novelties from Watches and Wonders from some of the brands. We're not going to cover all of the brands, of course, because there are too many brands exhibiting on this fair. But I've selected a few brands that I want to talk about. And of course, we are going to start with, as always, the biggest talking point of the show, which is Rolex. One of the biggest releases of the year, obviously the new Rolex Daytona with an updated caliber, with a facelift of the dial, the hour markers, etc. And for the first time in the platinum version, we have an exhibition case back on a Rolex, which is nothing super wow, but for Rolex it's mainly, or it's not a first, but it's, you know, for a serious model like this, it's a first. They released several different versions of the Daytona in different metals, in steel, in two-tone, in gold, and in platinum. And this is one of the biggest talking points. Some people love it, some people don't. I believe it's a nice upgrade because it now resembles more of the Zenith Daytonas, which is my favorite modern reference of the Daytona. But this was not the biggest talking point, and I'll jump into the Oyster Perpetual with the celebration dial. That is the one that looks like it has bubbles on it. Interesting and playful touch by Rolex on this release. It incorporates all the different dial colors of the now discontinued Oyster Perpetual versions. And some people just love this model and some people just hate it. I think it's playful, I think it's nice. It's not something I'd buy if I could get my hands on it. And another piece that really was a playful and interesting take was the Rolex Day-Date with the jigsaw puzzle dials. These are just I don't know, it's like a bit of a fuck you from Rolex, excuse the French, but they're like, let's do something that people will talk about for many, many, many months ahead. And obviously they accomplished that mission. I think they are cool looking dials. These are off catalog pieces, not something you'll get your hands on easily, probably super limited production. But I think they are quite funny, and I know that like the majority of the people out there really don't like these dials. But I think they are interesting, to say the least. And then it finally came, the new titanium Yacht-Master on a titanium bracelet. This is actually one of my favorite pieces that they released this year. I like titanium watches, it's refreshing to see it. The only concern I have is that they made it in 42 instead of 40. But you know, you can't get everything. But I really like the look of it. It's a proper tool watch, and I really like what I see here. Then also we had a couple of new GMT Masters. For the first time in the modern era, we have the full gold GMT Master on a Jubilee bracelet, which is for me the best combo. They also released it in two-tone, and the interesting part here is that, and I didn't see this at first, is that the bezel is also two-tone, so it's black and gray. And honorable mention to the 40mm Explorer. We saw the 36mm got introduced last year, or if it was the year before, and now it's back in 40mm because I guess many people really missed the 39. So now it's back in a 40mm case as well. Moving on from Rolex, we go to Cartier, and they had a strong year, much better than last, I must say. And let's start with the series that's most anticipated. It's the Privé line, where they release basically reissues of historically important models in a new package. And this year was the year of the Tank Normal. It got introduced in two different versions, one in yellow gold and one in platinum. They actually introduced a couple of more with the 24-hour complication and skeletonized movements, but we'll focus on like the core model. So yellow gold and platinum on bracelets, very vintage inspired brick bracelets. I really like those bracelets. And we also have vertically brushed dials in silver. And I must say, I had higher hopes for this watch. I still like it, but it's nothing I feel that I need to pull the trigger on. They made the sapphire crystal like shaped, such as the vintage models, which makes the dial sometimes a bit tricky to read. It like distorts the dial a bit. This I didn't love. It's a solid release, but it's not a home run in my eyes. because one release that I believe was a home run was the Tank Louis with the disco dial. So this is a tri-gold dial, so it incorporates white, yellow, and rose gold tones. This one has like a disco ball pattern that I really enjoyed a lot. This was probably one of my favorite releases from Cartier this year. They released two versions, one with like rectangles and one with this smaller cube pattern. One of my favorites by far, and a really nice addition to the Tank Louis lineup. Then we had a very playful Santos Dumont with micro rotor, and they released this version in 3 different metals. We have one in yellow gold with a blue lacquered case, similar to the one we saw on the Santos Dumont last year. We have one in rose gold and one in steel. And I just love when Cartier goes and skeletonizes their movement, because they do it really well. The funny part, or the playful part with this watch, is that they have the original airplane of Santos Dumont, Alberto Santos Dumont, the aviator, from 1907 as the micro rotor. And this is playful and really elegant at the same time. I think it's a nice touch. Important news. Finally, we have new dials in the Cartier Santos medium lineup. So from this year, we now have a green dial, which I don't like, sorry to say. I really don't like that kind of green shade, and a blue dial in the medium model. And this has been requested by myself in previous videos, but also from many customers over the last couple of years. And now we have 2 new, at least the green one, dials in the medium version of the Santos. The green dial is also available in the large version, and the blue dial was of course already available in the large version. But that is a addition that many have been requested, and finally they are listening to us, guys. They also introduced a bunch of new models, ladies pieces, new Tonka American, new Pasha with salmon dial that are nice, but nothing I got a closer look at. I focused on like the main novelties from Cartier. Honorable mention to the Santos skeleton that was blasted with baguettes, sick piece, super cool, and that one was just something a little bit extra that I didn't expect. So let's jump back to the Crown family and talk about Tudor. The main talking point, obviously, the new Tudor Black Bay 54, a 37mm die watch by Tudor. Super nice addition. This one might finally be the modern Tudor that I actually add to my collection. Loved the case size. It looks good. It reminds you a bit of the maxi case Submariners, but in a smaller package, so it's a bit more squarish on the wrist. Also comes on a rubber strap, which is a nice addition as well. T-fit clasp, the CASC certified in-house movement. Super nice, vintage inspired. The name also comes from the first Tudor Submariner that was born in 1954, and they have some design cues, for example on the bezel, also present on the Tudor Black Bay 54. This watch I will get my hands on and do an in-depth review later on as soon as they land here in Sweden. And in the Black Bay 41 line, new movement, Metas certified, so it's a master chronometer. They released it in 3 different versions: Jubilee bracelet with T-fit clasp, the Oyster one, and on the rubber strap. Burgundy bezel, nothing really new except the new movement, of course, which is a big thing, obviously. Then we had a couple of new releases in the ordinary Black Bay line, so ranging from 31 to 41 millimeters, with different dials, with or without diamonds. Also here with the Jubilee bracelet and T-fit clasp. And of course the new Tudor Black Bay GMT Pepsi bezel with the opaline or white dial. This one people have been longing for, both from Tudor and from Rolex. Now finally Tudor introduced it. Same specs and everything as the original Black Bay GMT, just the dial upgrade basically. And Patek had a not so strong year, I must say. They introduced some, of course, high complication pieces, which are, as always, mind-blowing. But in the more like regular model lineup, we have seen a new Aquanaut with an annual calendar function. Interesting release. I'm not sure yet if I love it or hate it, but I love the blue colorway at least. Rose gold case, annual calendar, Patek Philippe, Aquanaut. Interesting move. They introduced this in their Luce line, which is often the ladies piece, but 40mm case, obviously unisex model, wears really nicely on the wrist. And I'll see in a couple of weeks or months if I still like this one, but the blue colorway was the, you know, the big thing for me, and I really like this shade of blue. And while we're at blue dial Patek Philippe, they introduced a new Calatrava with a travel time function. Unfortunately, way too big rose gold case. When I saw it on the pictures, I thought like, wow, I hope this one will be wearable, but it wasn't, I'm afraid. So no, sorry Patek, you have to move on from these oversized cases. It just doesn't fit your heritage and DNA. They released a couple of different models, nothing special, a new couple of dial colors in the ordinary Aquanaut chronograph, that is, and some other Calatravas, but nothing more to talk about in my eyes. Chopard had a pretty strong year as well. They released a new Alpine Eagle with salmon dial, the Alpine Eagle XPS. This is their ultra thin version with a small seconds indicator at 6 o'clock and no date. This one I didn't try on in person, but based on the pictures, it looks really nice with this salmon dial. And as you know, and if you've seen my Alpine Eagle video, you know I really love this dial. So good, strong release, I believe. And the other big and strong release that Chopard made was the LUC 1860, which is a revival of their 1860 model. This time without a date, and this time with a salmon dial that really looks good. I hope to see this one in person sooner rather than later. It's a classic dress watch at 36.5 millimeters in diameter, steel case, very beautiful guilloche dial, really strong release from Chopard, and this seemed to make a lot of buzz on social media. We'll see if it will sell as well. Usually the press loves these kind of things, and me as well, but with the general public, it's not always a hit. So we'll see, but two strong releases by Chopard. Another brand that had a very strong year, obviously Jaeger-LeCoultre, introduced a couple of new reversos. My favorite was the chronograph with a skeletonized movement and 30-minute retrograde chronograph counter. They introduced it in steel with a pale blue dial, and also in rose gold with a black dial. Really like it. A really nice watch, beautiful finishing, and yeah, just looks stunning. They also introduced 4 new references in the Reverso Tribute Small Second, 3 in rose gold and 1 in steel. The rose gold versions have a silver sunray dial, a burgundy sunray dial, and a black sunray dial. All look really good. These are new cases, ultra thin, so they measure approximately 7.5 millimeters in thickness. Wears nicely, a tad bit too large still, but very nice feeling on the wrist. But the favorite of the 4 was the steel one with the opaline matte dial, because if you've seen a couple of videos of on this channel before, you know I'm not a super huge fan of sunray finishes on the dials, but solid additions to the Reverso lineup. And of course we have to mention the duo phase tourbillon, which was a crazy piece. It was really nice to have it on the wrist and in hand. They made a phenomenal job with that one of their favorites as well from Jaeger-LeCoultre. So they didn't release that many models and they focused on the Reverso, but they made a strong case with the few they released, and I believe Jaeger had a strong year this year. So we're closing in on the last 2 brands that I want to mention in this video. Obviously we have to mention IWC, big year this year, relaunching the Ingenieur, inspired by the original Jumbo from the 70s, that was of course designed by no other than Mr. Gerald Genta. This watch has become a big talking point as well, mainly because of the price tag, and I must say at the price it's quite expensive. I understand their positioning, looking at the competition, Chopard Peragor Laureato and Chopard Alpine Eagle, but considering what you get here, which is a 40mm stainless steel watch or in titanium. With the movement, I understand people's concerns because it's basically the same movement and, you know, case, build, finish, etc. as the last Genta inspired Ingenieur, that was the 3239, for a price tag that's like 10k more. So I don't know, we'll see how the sales will go for this watch, but I like it. I like the dials, I like the build quality and finish of the watch. 40mm integrated watch wears larger, even though the lug to lug is like 46, 47mm, it still has a lot of presence on the wrist. The favorite of the four was for me the titanium version with the sandblasted case and bracelet and gray dial. So I think they made a good job on this, not just sure on the pricing, to be completely honest. And moving on into the last brand, I want to give a shout out to Czapek and their Antarctic Revelation, which is a skeletonized version of the Antarctic. This one looks super sick. I really like it. It was a very nice skeletonized Antarctic. This will probably a watch that will be hard to get and that will resell with a significant premium, because the amount of depth they managed to have in this dial and this movement is, yeah, a super cool piece by Czapek. They released several different Antarctics, but this one was by far my favorite of the lot. All right, so that was a rather quick summary of the novelties that I've seen on Watches and Wonders and my thoughts on them. I'm eager to hear what you think. What did stand out for you? What was the best release? What was the worst release? Let me know in the comments, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.